This is Citizens Gone Wild, and I'm going to begin with a very nice story. A lot of companies have become very, very dog friendly. Because of the pandemic, more and more people are working from home. And when they work from home, they often feel better about themselves and life in general if they have a pet. This has led to a lot of people adopting pets all of a sudden. And this is wonderful news, in my opinion, since I am a longtime pet owner, or pet companion, or pet servant, or something. And companies, of course, joined in on this. I don't know, perhaps they think that it makes their workers happier. It probably does. And a number of companies have gone so far as to actually pay you a bonus of, let's say, $300 if you adopt a pet. In addition, they often sponsor certain activities, such as having a YouTube channel where your company, the people in your company, can post pictures of their pets. So you can see your pets and you can see their pets. And you might be twice as happy at work. It makes me happy whenever I see a stray cat wandering across the background, because the commentators are acting as if they're so important and it's so portentous. And when a little kitty cat walks across, it kind of brings you back down to earth. One thing that I thought that Republicans could do, which they're not doing, is to gain the moral high ground by telling people how on college campuses Muslims and leftists had joined forces to harass in a very vicious manner Jews on campus and Jews in general. For example, they have a little slogan, "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be." Now that's slightly coded language from the river is the Jordan, the sea is the Mediterranean, and the Jews in between are dead or subservient. I don't know why the Republicans don't grab on this, because they're usually not honored greatly by the media as being in the forefront of civil rights activities. And this would allow them to come on the right side, assuming you think it's the right side is against genocide against Jews. And they might enjoy doing that some while. The American left has controlled the narrative in this country for a long, long time. And one way they do this is they will pick out an issue, let's say immigration, and they will make some fairly outrageous claim about it. The children are being mishandled, the children are being tortured, the children are dying, the children this or that. And then, of course, the media will pick up on this story, and eventually it'll get straightened out. It'll come down to the idea that children were removed from their mothers. The same thing was done by Obama. But that story will be neglected, and people will go away with a little residual thought that, geez, these people aren't very nice. These Republicans are pretty mean-spirited and possibly racist to boot. Okay. I thought I'd insert a joke or two here. When wearing a bikini, women reveal 90% of their body. Men are so polite that they only look at the covered parts. Not great? Okay. Well, it's as good as what you've done. Here, my therapist says I have a preoccupation with vengeance. We'll see about this. And no, I don't want to tell that one. It was going to be, you're not fat, you're just easier to see. But that's cruel and unnecessary. I thought that the coronavirus is getting, well, it's getting a lot of space on the news, and quite rightly. But I never had the idea until I read an article in a British journal that this virus may be getting oversold. Oversold, you say? Well, yes. Did you know that there was a virus, an Asian flu, in 1957 that killed between 2 and 4 million people? I didn't till I read this, which shows that you can learn things if you read things. 2 to 4 million deaths. There was also a Hong Kong flu that killed between 1 and 2 million people in 1968 through 1969. I don't know if this is good news or bad news, but it gives you a little bit of perspective. It won't make you cheerful, but it gives you a little bit of perspective. At this point in time, I looked this up yesterday, about 500,000 people have been killed by coronavirus, and 130,000 of them in the United States, which indicates we're getting more than our fair share here. But it also indicates that compared to other flus, viruses, it may be a little bit oversold. One thing that bugs me almost continuously, as you can tell, is that if Biden becomes president, there will be more and more, we will be more and more a nation ruled by ideas, by a worldview put together by intellectuals. And intellectuals have become our most important, I'm tempted to say, religious figures, religious influences. We live surely in the first age where intellectuals rule. And by intellectuals, I just mean people that produce nothing but words, which is not a bad thing. I was a professor for many years, but it is very strange indeed to be in actually the whole Western world, and in particular in a country, the United States, which is more and more ruled by the ideas generated by intellectuals. Not intellectuals by themselves. They have made peace and get along very nicely with the incredibly wealthy. But the intellectuals are definitely the high priest. The problem I have with them is this high priesthood has a deep distaste for Western civilization in general, and the United States and Israel in particular. And they oppose any other religion, such as Christianity or Judaism, which worship another God. The main belief of the new class, in my opinion, is faith in themselves. They believe that they are born to rule. Born to rule by having the dominant theme of our times made up by them, the intellectuals. And of those intellectuals, the most important are the Ivy League intellectuals. And in fact, if you didn't go to an Ivy League school, it's not too likely you become an influential figure in this priesthood of the left. One thing I don't like is that in a never-ending battle in all societies, in liberty and equality, they go with equality. Western civilization has been, as far as I know, the only civilization in the history of the world that has liberty as their prime value. They believe that before mankind had the benefit of having them, the intellectuals, rule, they saw through a glass darkly, a quote from the Bible. But now that the saviors, the leftist intellectuals have come along, they will see more clearly. And the first thing they will see, the intellectuals hope, is that they, the intellectuals, should be in charge. If you want to know more about this, go to any college campus and you can experience for yourself what life under these new clerisy, as they've been called, will be like. It will be like, without the violence, but it will be like living in the Soviet Union in the 1930s or 40s. There will be endless meaning, endless instructions, endless directions to be followed. If you like that sort of things, you're about to be a happy man. I have an area that I call fake news. It's not fake in the sense that you say it's Monday when it's Tuesday, or you say it's Tuesday when it's Wednesday, or you say it's Wednesday when it's Thursday. That's enough of that. But it's fake in the sense that it's interesting news that pertains to our times, but you will not hear it. things not mentioned. This is my idea of fake news. For example, how many of you know that the biggest slave traders regarding taking blacks out of black Africa to be slaves were the Muslims, the Arab Muslims? This is almost never mentioned. We now have tons of people graduating from high school, from college, from graduate school, who don't even realize that we, white people, and we, the United States, were fairly minor players in the slave trade. Well, I shouldn't say minor, that's all wrong. But still, the main slave traders were the Muslim Arabs. Africa can be divided into three parts. You see those three fingers? At the top is what we would call the Arab lands, Libya, Morocco, places like that. And then the second layer is the Sahara Desert. The Sahara Desert is gigantic. It is gigantic. And below that is the largest area in Africa, Black Africa. The Arabs have played a very big role in making the blacks into slaves. And if you see current pictures, there still are some slaves in Africa. You will always be looking at a black man or a black woman. And the slave owner will always be lighter colored, kind of a mauve. There hasn't been a lot talked about in this, and there hasn't been even that much scholarship about it, but we do know certain things. We know that they came here, that it lasted for 13 centuries, not 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 centuries. Arab Muslims have been taking blacks out of Africa to be slaves for 13 centuries. It's easy to remember because that's the same number of years you have to be alive before your bar mitzvah. They came in 2 ways. One, they took them out of black Africa and sailed to the northern part, the top part of Africa, where, again, Morocco, Tunisia, Libya are. And they also marched them across the Sahara Desert. The Sahara Desert is no fooling around land. It is a very, very difficult area to traverse. And many, many, many black people died on that route. The crossing took 3 months in incredible heat. Here's the testimony of a German explorer Gustav Nachtigall, talking about the people who are being transported, the blacks are being transported from black Africa across the Sahara Desert to the northern tier of Africa, where the Arab Muslims will rule. The poor children of a black country seem to meet death here at the last stage of a long, hopeless, and painful journey. The long journey accomplished with insufficient food and scarce water, the contrast between the rich natural resources and the humid atmosphere of their homeland and the dry, anemic air of the desert, the fatigue and privations imposed by their masters and by the circumstances in which they find themselves, all this gradually ruined their young strengths. The memory of their homeland has disappeared along the way. Their fear of an unknown future, the endless journey under blows, hunger, thirst, and deadly exhaustion have paralyzed their last faculties of resistance. If the poor creatures lack strength to get up and walk again, they are simply abandoned, and their mind slowly fades under the destructive rays of the sun, hunger, and thirst. The Arab slave trade was also special and different than any other slave trade because it focused on appalling violence, rape, and mainly something that you may not have heard of, castration. The men were systematically castrated to prevent them from reproducing and becoming a stock. This inhumane practice resulted in a death rate of 6 out of 10 people who were mutilated, dying from the wounds of castration. Castration could be done by just removing, well, let's think in terms of hot dogs and beans. The beans are removed. But a lot of the time, if the slave master was in a hurry to make use of them, they would just whack off the hot dog and the beans, all gone. And of course, this was frequently infected. And of course, these people did not live long. The Arab slave trade probably reduced the population of Africa by 17 million people. And it was brutal, and almost no one has taught about it. We probably have millions of people graduating from school today, high school and even college, who think America was the biggest slave trader in the world, maybe the only one for what they're taught today. Anyway, we were not. Anyone, a human being, a slave, is a human tragedy and god awful and evil. But we took in maybe 400,000 slaves to America. The slaves in the Muslim world were used for everything: servants, harem keepers. This is where you often have a picture in your mind where they worked. Laborers in fields, mines, and cannon fodder in armies. By the way, they often rebelled. There was a revolt of a group called the Zanjeh, which occurred near the city of Basra, which you may have heard about, which is in Iraq in 1869. It lasted 15 years. You go. Glad to see that. They actually controlled many cities and found an embryonic state, but it eventually was defeated. But it took 13 years. Good for them. Good for the Arabs, the black slaves who revolted. There's still a great deal of prejudice toward black people in Arab nations. And the author of this article asks a question I want to ask is, when will there be an international day to commemorate the victims of the Arab Muslim slave trade? Never. That's when. Now, here's another joke. You need one after that. If you think nobody cares whether you're alive, try missing a couple of payments. I don't know if that rings true with the latest group, but you might. Here's one. Money can't buy happiness, but it keeps the kids in touch. That's for older people, I think. I have one aphorism that I want to offer. That's like a short saying. This is for Eric Hoffer, one of the probably the greatest aphorism writer of our time. The remarkable thing is that we really love our neighbor as ourselves. We do unto others as we do unto ourselves. We hate others when we hate ourselves. We're tolerant toward others when we tolerate ourselves. We forgive others when we forgive ourselves. We are prone to sacrifice others when we are ready to sacrifice ourselves. It is not for love of self, but hatred of self, which is the root of troubles that afflict our world. That's by a guy named Eric Hoffer in a book called The Passionate State of Mind. Don't rush out and get that book. I'll read his best aphorisms to you. I hope to see you next week. This is Citizens Going Wild, and I hope to see you on Monday at 11 o'clock. Thank you for listening.